Welcome to the Daily Horror Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Krieger, bringing you daily reviews of currently streaming horror movies for your twisted pleasure. Be aware that these reviews may include mild spoilers. And as always, I hope you enjoy. I think we can all agree that for a zombie comedy to be noteworthy these days, it must bring something unique to the genre. Trying something new while finding the right balance of comedy and horror, with both done adequately well, is a complicated high-wire act. And while Little Monsters, which is currently streaming on Hulu, struggles at times to maintain this balance, it is carried by yet another terrific performance from Lupita Nyong'o. So, given the strength of her performance, it's baffling as to why it takes nearly 15 minutes for her to be introduced. Written and directed by Abe Forsyth, Little Monsters begins with what can only be described as a cluster of fucks. We're introduced to Dave, played by Alexander England, a washed-up and misguided musician whose latest profanity-laced argument with his girlfriend leads to their breaking up. Now, forced to stay with his sister and her son Felix, Dave seemingly finally hit rock bottom. That is, until he meets Felix's teacher, Miss Caroline, played by Nyong'o. In a misguided attempt to win her affection, Dave volunteers to chaperone a class field trip to a nearby farm. Though what begins as idyllic quickly turns hellish as hordes of the undead escape from a nearby research facility and descend upon the farm. Now, Dave must work with Miss Caroline and a reluctant television host to protect the children. My initial issue with Little Monsters is that far too much focus is given to developing Dave, who in all honesty isn't a very interesting character. He serves as a one-note dunce that Forsyth capitalizes on for far too long. While his character's shtick initially delivers some laughs, it quickly grows stale and feels redundant. And while his arc evolves for the sake of more heartfelt moments, the time spent on him would have been far better service to Nyong'o. No stranger to horror, Nyong'o is the defining star of the film. Her ability to combine a charismatic, motherly teacher with a pitchfork-wielding zombie huntress gives Little Monsters its only real spark. She's a standout not only in charm but in wardrobe, as her bright yellow dress is a stark contrast to the bloody undead corpses that are ravaging the farm. The biggest laughs stem from Miss Caroline's well-meaning attempts to keep the children calm and shielded from the reality of the zombie outbreak. She isn't covered in blood after killing a handful of zombies, she's just back from having a jam fight. These moments help to overlook the more played out and tiresome humor, such as handicap jokes and Forsyth's over-reliance on using fuck as a punchline. There is also the most egregious and irksome character who plays a significant role in the second half of the film. Josh Gad plays Teddy McGiggle, a larger-than-life host of Australia's most popular children's program. McGiggle, who happens to be at the farm during the outbreak, is revealed to be anything but his bubbly television persona. He's exposed as a foul-mouthed, alcoholic sex fiend who, big shocker, hates children. His character mainly contributes to a slew of expletives whenever there's a lull in dialogue. His humor is far too forced and serves as little more than a constant distraction for the wrong reasons. Little Monsters' humor loses its bite over the course of the film, but here's where its heartfelt moments pick up some of the slack. At the core of the movie is little Felix, who, apart from being adorable, brings an innocence that plays well off the film's general filthiness. There's a recurring Darth Vader gag of him attempting to use force powers that elicits an unavoidable awe every time it reoccurs. His character mostly serves as the setup for Dave's redemption arc. Dave's evolution from a screw-up to the savior of children becomes fairly endearing, even if, again, I'd have preferred more scenes with Nyong'o. She is so effective in depicting how an educator might respond to an unfathomable nightmare. Though the focus of the film feels misguided at times, as the plot often focuses on the less interesting characters, shielding its true star. As for the zombies in this zombie comedy, they feature sound practical effects, makeup, and gallons of gore, though continually play second fiddle to the film's protagonists. There's also the fact that the farm setting isn't utilized nearly enough. Other than a pitchfork skewering and several tractor segments, the unique environment isn't made all that memorable. It's a shame, given that while we get several Nyong'o zombie kill streaks, the potential for zombie carnage via farming equipment is sparse. If anything, Little Monsters is indicative of how a singular performance can make an average film more engaging. Between Lupita Nyong'o and Diesel La Torraca, there's heartfelt chemistry that makes for earnest compassion. That said, it breaks little ground within the horror comedy genre, given its fair amount of forced humor and elementary writing. It makes for an average zombie comedy that has memorable moments amongst unremarkable undead filler. If you're really in the need for some juvenile laughs this week, as I'm sure we all are, Little Monsters is streaming on Hulu. And that'll do it for another episode of Daily Horror Habit. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Daily Horror movie review. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Daily Horror Habit on your preferred streaming service and follow @Daily Horror Habit on Instagram and @Daily Horror Pod on Twitter.